Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and I'm happy to be with you today. We're going to be talking about week 3 of module 3. So module 3 being the report of findings, week 3 being CA delivers the report of findings, which I know many of you have this as an area that you're looking to grow into. Others of you have already done this, and you have CAs that are delivering the report of findings. This is basically combining what could be a sidebar from our general module topic, which is the report of findings, with the other topic of team training, right? We have our module 1 in the series, which is team development. And one of the things that we've taught you in the team development series is to really hire A players for your team. And what a great place to be when you have A players. And I see some of you on the call right now who are A players, Celeste. And anyways, so yes, it's great when you have A players on your team, which we taught you in module 1, how to bring those members on board. So one of the things that we can utilize with our team is we can actually incorporate their help in delivering the report of findings to not only engage our team more directly with patient care, which is certainly an advantage to being a well-trained CA, but also it frees up the doctor, right? If we have some people on our team who can deliver the report of findings or who can help out with those essential patient interactions, then that frees us up to see more patients, to focus on other aspects of the business, that type of thing. So we want to make sure that we have this structure in place. I want to just share an example with you from yesterday, because I'm in full-time practice, just like you. And I was in a room with a patient going through a report of findings. It was actually their annual care plan renewal for a great long-time patient. This was his 6th year of coming in to see us on a regular basis for chiropractic care. While I was in that room, my CA was completing her report of findings, which started with me going in and introducing the patient or CA to do the report of findings with the woman who's coming in as a patient and her husband. And then as soon as I finished that, then I went into the next room and I did my report with the care plan renewal. So simultaneously, we were taking care of 2 patients in 2 very important aspects of their care. And that was happening at the same time. So again, having CAs be able to participate with this is really essential to running a successful practice and serving more patients. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about how do we incorporate this into the flow and actually make this happen. So let me jump over to that screen. And actually one more thing here. As I like to say, if you, excuse me, if you have a question or anything that comes to mind that you need help with during this call, just raise your hand or type in a note or something. Let me know so we can make sure that when we get through this, that you have all the answers you need and you're poised to implement this into your practice. So as you can see on your screen, the CA is, I'm just moving a couple things around here. There we go. Delivers the report of findings. Now, I want to remind everyone, because this is module 3, excuse me, and the next module will be module 4, which is the financial arrangements module, and that'll be in July on the 13th. And for that seminar or for that module, we'll kick that off with a live seminar. So that'll be in my office on a Saturday. You can bring your team. It's a beautiful time of year. Maybe plan an overnight in Santa Cruz with your team, like a getaway, and go to the beach or the boardwalk or something fun in Santa Cruz to make it a fun event. And then, of course, during the day, we'll have the seminar here in my office where you can actually roll up your sleeves. We'll do the training. You can see the flow in my office in terms of how we organize this aspect. And anyways, we'll have that all set up for you. So just wanted to put that out there, that would be a great time for you to plan on attending the seminar and getting this information firsthand that you'll need. So let's go through the sequence, and I'll kind of tie it into what we've covered as we're going through this module. As I said, this is week 3, and here's an example of my team. So one thing I want to say is, and I heard a recent quote that I want to repeat because it was a great quote. And what this quote was, we see patients in between trainings. And I thought, well, that really sort of sums up what we do in my office, right? We have lots of regular trainings. We just had a training on Monday. That was our weekly team meeting. We had another training on Tuesday. That was a role play, or if you want to call it drills, or another office that I just heard they call it a scenario training. So they train on scenarios. So we had that training on Tuesday. So there's really this sequence of trainings that help you to really refine how your team operates. And then, of course, when it's game time and you need to go into the report of findings, everybody's ready, everybody knows what they're doing, and they're ready for action with the patient. So, work with your team. Everybody can deliver the report of findings. You can serve more people. You can increase your high ceiling practice. So in the first part of this series, remember where we left off was, and actually, let me just open up my screen for a moment just to backtrack a little bit, because we left off with the doctor doing the introduction of the CA about to deliver the report of findings, right? So we're going into the room together. I go in with my CA, the patient's there with their spouse, and I say, as a paraphrase, my CA is going to be going over your results with you. I'll see you afterwards. I'll answer any questions you have, and then hopefully we can get started with your care. So that's where we left off in the flow. So then I leave the room, and doctors, you'll leave the room now because you're going to maybe go into doing a care plan renewal, or you're going to go adjust some other patients. And your CA now is in the driver's seat for that report of findings. Now that you've left the room, this is where we want to pick up, because in this, let me just share my screen. In this moment, CAs, you want to emphasize the severity of the patient's subluxations. And you're going to start with a general educational way. Now, I know we went over this on day 1 with the new patient, right? We did this in the consultation. We did this in the initial examination, the history taking. We went through the subluxations, but we want to have a recap of that for 2 reasons. One, it may have been the first time that the patient has heard these terms or these concepts. And so being a little bit repetitive is fine. Secondly, your patient is most likely here with their spouse, and their spouse may have never heard any of these terms. So we're going to start by doing a recap of the subluxations in a general way. So this is and I have a video on this. You can watch this. I'll get to it in a moment with the website, but here is a takeaway segment of the spine. As we talked about on your last visit, these are the bones, these are the discs, these are the nerve roots. And these nerves are carrying messages from your brain to every cell in your body. Without those messages flowing through to your body and messages from your body flowing back to your brain, there is no communication, and the entire system, i.e. your body or your health, shuts down. So we have to make sure that this system is very well protected. That's in a normal scenario. Now, through some cause, and then you would recap. In your case, you shared with us that 5 years ago, you had a fall off your bicycle and you landed, and at that time you had lower back pain. It went away. You didn't think about it anymore, but it started to resurface and come back on a regular basis to where now it's been constant and you're needing help with this. And then you would turn to the spouse and say, this is what your wife shared with us at her first appointment. Were you aware of this? Yes, I'm aware of that. That's right. Well, this problem, even though she just told you that it's been going on for a week, has actually, based on the exam that we did, been there for literally almost 5 years, right? It just hasn't been persistent and constant the whole time. So whatever that cause was, it knocked a bone out of alignment. And in this next section, or this next model, because we have a model of 4 different vertebrae, I showed you that in module 2. Here, because of the subluxation, because of the misalignment, it's compressing the discs. and the discs, as you can see in this model, are a little bit smaller. That's because of that excessive pressure from the misalignment. Now, if it's caught here, great. It'll get turned around, it'll get stabilized. It's almost like catching a cavity immediately, like literally the day you got the cavity, the day you ate the Snickers bar. If you brushed your teeth that day and cleared it up, you wouldn't have any problems down the road. So if we can catch the subluxation here, there's no further damage. But unfortunately, when a subluxation begins in this way, there isn't always a pain signal that comes with it. Sometimes the subluxation, much like the cavity, can go on for years. And actually, let me open up my screen because this is something that you want to get used to discussing with your patients all the time. Like this might be during your table talk, this might be during your new patient consultation, it might be during the report of findings, anytime, even during your orientation. Many times, much like a cavity in a person's tooth, you won't have symptoms when this condition first is caused or begins. But either way, we can see the compression building. And if that's stabilized right now, right then, and caught quickly, great, it's gone, the spine is back to normal. But if it's allowed to continue, the damage builds. And in this next model, you can see where the bones are starting to change their shape. They're building spurs, the disc is collapsing, and the nerves are definitely compromised. Even then, in this case, you may not have pain yet. Now, if it's caught here, unfortunately, we can't get it back to normal, but we can actually stabilize it so it's contained and the damage is arrested. But many times patients don't even realize it's going on because, once again, they may not have pain yet. And so the condition is allowed to continue silently, but the damage is still accumulating. If that damage continues further, right, and I'm moving through these models, if you picture this, there's four models. One is normal, two is a compressed disc, three has some decay that's visible, and the fourth model is indicating that the disc has collapsed and the bones are fusing. So if it's caught in phase 2, we can stop it here. And the damage is contained. It's not reversed, but it's at least contained, and the progress or the damage is not going to continue. That's ideal if we can stop it there. But in many cases, once again, the pain isn't felt, or maybe it's intermittent, it's kind of occasional. And the bones can actually go until fusion before it's actually a completely damaged bone that can't be restored. Now, unfortunately, at that point, when the bones fuse, many times that's the point where it finally hits the pain fibers. And the person is in excruciating pain, most likely disabled, but unfortunately, they waited too long, and so the damage cannot be even reversed. And at that point, we can't help you here. Now, I want you to really take some notes on this because I'm building through these models. And what do you think the patient's thinking the whole time? They're thinking, wow, that sounds really serious. Where am I at? Right? And that's what we want to build in this scenario. We want to build that curiosity. We want to build that intense focus so that we know that when we do show them where they're at, they understand how it relates to the context of just how serious this condition can be. So that's why, going back to the screen, we're emphasizing the severity of subluxations. I put on the screen of the patient's subluxations, but we're actually not specifically talking about their subluxations at this point. We're just talking about it in a general educational way so that they can be informed as to how this process can happen if you're irresponsible about it. So here, let me jump ahead, because from there, you want to pause. Right? The patient, and actually, let me just jump ahead to the next screen because as I was describing that, sorry, one more time. This is the models that I was talking about. So if you look at the screen, this is a normal. It says textbook normal. In a phase 1, we see that the discs are compressed. Phase 2, down here, we see that there's some damage. There's bone spurs developing. The nerves have become thinner. The disc is starting to break apart. So that's a phase 2. Phase 3 means that the disc has died off and the bones are actually fused together. Now, there's different definitions between phase 3 and phase 4 in different textbooks and different posters and educational supplies. So however you choose to describe that, you want to make sure that you're just clear on this progressive nature of subluxations. And with the punchline being, when you finish that explanation, let me go back up to, oh, I'm sorry, right here, there. When you finish that explanation, what's the punchline? The punchline is simply a question. Now, is it better to allow this to run its course and possibly without any symptoms at all? Or is it better to catch it as early as possible and stabilize it to prevent further damage? And I think the answer to that question is obvious, but it's from the interest of being having a Socratic education, we want to make sure that we're asking those questions because that's what's going to build an understanding in the mind of your patient about how they need to be responsible about their health and this condition, right? So we want to, that's the question that we would ask right as we finish going through those models. Now that you've seen these models, is it better to wait until the damage has gone so far and maybe without any symptoms, or is it better to be proactive and prevent it from getting to that point? Okay. And I think along the lines of using analogies, just, different people understand different things. They gravitate towards different definitions. Some are more visual, some want to hear it, some want to feel it. So in the interest of appealing to whatever the particular style that patient leans towards or gravitates towards, let's use all of them. Let's hold the model up and say, now feel this sharp edge on this. That's what degeneration feels like. Or can you see how this disc has shrunk here? That's what happens when a disc is collapsing, right? So involve the patient so that they have a real clear understanding, knowing that in the background, in their mind, what's happening? They're wondering, where am I at? Okay, you've got my attention, doctor. I see that this is serious. I'm concerned. I can hear your concern. I'm sorry, I'm saying doctor as if I'm doing it, but ideally, CAs, you get to be in that position and you're just simply laying out the facts. You're providing the education. You're asking questions, though, to build an understanding. And with understanding comes responsibility, right? That's when a person's going to be much more responsible about their health because they have an understanding now and they're not just being told what to believe, right? Okay, so let's go back to the top here. When I finish those models and I ask that question, what's better, addressing this early on or waiting until the damage is permanent? Then you want to pause, and you pause by saying, the doctor and I have reviewed your file. So what does that do? When you say the doctor and I have reviewed your file, what you're essentially saying is, I am an authority on the subject. And I know with many CAs, there's that uncertainty of like, am I really equipped to be describing a patient's results to the patient when, I'm not a doctor? But I want to give you that authority. I want to give you that confidence to be able to say, the doctor and I reviewed your file. And what that does then is it gives the patient the confidence in you to be able to describe the findings and the results and to go from there. I mean, obviously you're not going to adjust the patient, but everything short of that in explaining what's going on, that's something that you can do because you've been trained and the patient wants to know that the words coming out of your mouth as a CA are a direct extension of the doctor. And that's how you'll make that happen is with this statement, just starting out and saying, the doctor and I have reviewed your file. So as the doctor said, in order to accept you as a patient, it's going to be really important that you can follow through with the recommendations, which I'll go through in just a minute. So we want to repeat that requirement to accept a patient. Again, this builds authority for you CAs as someone who is speaking as an expert on the subject, or at least as a very well-educated individual on the subject. And from there, we went through the explanation, right? So we described the subluxation with the degeneration. We emphasized the end stage, and I showed you the models, and that's what those look like. So from here, because they now have this general understanding, we want to bring it in more specific, right? We want to make sure that they now understand, okay, that was the general explanation, and now we're going to go through the specifics of what's happening for you. And as I said, when you do this correctly, that's the question that's in their mind. They're saying to themselves, or they're thinking to themselves, okay, I understand what you just said. I understand how serious this is. Where am I at? I mean, it sounds like you're leading up to something. Is this like terrible news? The doctor said in order for me to accept you as a patient. So obviously there's some hesitation there. Maybe my condition is so advanced that they don't even know if it's um, stoppable or manageable. These are the questions that are going through their head, and we intentionally want that to happen, not from a controlling or power trip way. We want it to happen from the standpoint that here's a person who needs our help. And not only do we want to provide that help on a short-term basis to get them out of this healing crisis that they're in, but we want them to be more responsible in the future. We want them to utilize chiropractic care for themselves and for their family in a way that is constructive and proactive to prevent other health problems down the road, right? And I know that we're how do I want to say this? We're taking money away from the pharmaceutical industry by doing this. I don't have a problem with that. Do you have a problem with that? I certainly don't have a problem with that. For every dollar the pharmaceutical companies lose and we gain, that is a proud moment in chiropractic, right? We all know the intentions of the pharmaceutical industry are not in the best interest of the patients. I know that's not 100% true all the time, but as a general stereotype, pharmaceutical companies are in the business to make money. They only big pharma is only healthy. You might want to write this down, and you can share this in your orientation class. Pharma is only healthy when we as the population are sick. That's the only time pharma is healthy, is when we are sick. So thinking about that in the context of, do we want patients to have long-term chiropractic care, as we say in DC trainings, lifetime care, 1 year at a time? Absolutely. They're going to have more fun. They're going to have a better quality of life. They're going to enjoy more time doing what they love to do. And we get to be a part of that. And that's such a great position to be in. So we want to shift over now from this general explanation. This is what subluxations do. This is what they cause. This is how they can affect you or affect people in general. And now we want to shift into being more specific and dial it right into answering the other big question that the patient's asking in their mind, which is, where am I at? I see how serious this is. That doesn't look good. Where am I? Right? And that's where we're going to go next. So I'll just jump back over here quickly, because as our last slide, that's where we're going to jump into. And we'll start with that next week, because we want to answer that question when we say, okay, here's where you're at, right? So in week 4, we will review the subluxations in whatever capacity you choose to go through that. That's where we're going to go with that next. Okay, so let's jump over to the website. And again, this is a great time. If you have any questions, just let me know. Happy to open up your line. And I think just because today's topic is so centered around CAs, I'm gonna ask a CA to jump in with me and just give some feedback on this. But as you can see on the screen, we are in week 3, which is this topic here, and I've pulled up the materials here. So here's the script, and this is right when the doctor has left the room. Right, the doctor walks out. CA says, the doctor reviewed your complete file with me, and I can now explain the findings. If you have any questions I'm unable to answer, the doctor is available at any time. Now let's pause for a minute there and read the footnote, because the footnote says, this statement addresses the concerns of a patient who feels the CA is unqualified to deliver the report of findings on behalf of the doctor. Knowing the doctor is available at any time if needed is reassuring, right? So again, I want to build confidence in you, CAs, and I want to build confidence in you doctors, knowing that your CA is able to do this, because those little phrases, those comments, those statements are what build that type of rapport and confidence in your team, right? So then the patient says, it sounded like my condition was pretty serious. Is it really that bad? Well, the doctor's concerned about you. So again, CAs, you don't have to say yes to that question. You don't have to say, you're doomed. What you can say is, the doctor's concerned, or I'm concerned. And the good news, though, is you're in the right place. We feel confident that we can help you to get the results you need, right? So the doctor's concerned about you, but feels confident that you will achieve the results you need. And then turning to the spouse, right? Because the spouse is Mary. Mary, the doctor gave me specific items for you to help John with. I will get to those in a few minutes when I explain the recommendations, right? So you're bringing this together where they're feeling involved, they're feeling engaged, they're feeling acknowledged for taking the time to be here for this appointment. So then Mary, the spouse, says, okay, I'm ready to help in any way that I can. And let's jump down to footnote 2. Involving the spouse and including them in the overall process validates the reason they were asked to attend the appointment. Okay, now I know that there's some coaching seminar practices out there where they say the spouse needs to come to the report of findings because you have to make a financial decision and a commitment to the appointments. Well, if I'm the spouse, that's not validating why I'm here, right? I know, I mean, my wife and I have been together for 34 years. I'm fully confident that my wife is capable of making her own financial decisions or deciding what it is that she wants to do. And if you ask me to come to a doctor's appointment to make those kinds of decisions, to me, that would be insulting for my wife to have me sitting there saying, okay, honey, you can pay that amount of money. That would be insulting. So to get away from that, though, I want to make sure that the spouse is involved and engaged and they have homework to do with the patient to help the patient get the best results possible. So there is that involvement that's going to happen. Okay, so then we go back up here. Okay, I'm ready to help in any way I can. John, for the doctor to accept you as a patient, it will be important that you receive all of the chiropractic care that has been recommended. First, I'll review details about your condition and the results of your exam. Then I'll explain the doctor's recommendations and the cost of your care plan. So you're framing it here, right? You're saying, okay, this is how this is going to go. And this again validates why the spouse came, right? We included that here. We're going to go through, well, anyways, I'm going to explain the doctor's recommendations. I guess that part is also going to include the exercises, but you're framing this so that they are both involved, they're engaged, and they know what the process is going to look like. So let's read footnote number 3. The CA should also repeat the push-off as part of the doctor's recommendations for accepting the patient. And we did that right up here. John, for the doctor to accept you as a patient, ... right? This will add retention and better results. So we're letting them know, look, if you want to get the best results, this is what you're going to have to do. If you're unwilling to do that, that's okay. It's your decision. It's your body. It's your life. That's fine. And no hard feelings from us. We just wouldn't be able to accept you as a patient because and you can just ask this as a question, because if you don't take care of this properly, or if you don't do what's needed, is your condition going to respond? No. Is it going to get better or worse? It's going to get worse if you don't do what's needed to take care of it. That's right. And we would rather not have you as a patient here knowing that your condition is getting worse while you're coming here. You won't be happy with us. We wouldn't want to do that to you. So let's make sure we know right from the outset, here's the parameters of what we will need to do in order to accept you as a patient. Okay. So, and I'm sorry, this is probably going to be a terrible analogy, but I think you'll understand why I'm using it. Let's suppose that you had a bacterial infection that was serious enough to where you actually had to go to the doctor and you had to get a prescription of antibiotics. And when you went to get the prescription and you pick it up from the doctor, I know nowadays it's all through drugstores, but let's say you went to the doctor to get it and you told the doctor on the spot when he handed it to you and he said, you have to take this to save your life, to stop the infection. And you said, that's great, doctor, I appreciate it, but I'm only going to take 2 capsules, one today, one tomorrow, and that's all I'm going to take of this stuff. Well, what's the doctor going to say to that? He's probably going to say, and I think most of us would understand this, give me that bottle back. This is not going to help you. I'm not even going to sell it to you. In fact, I'm not even going to proceed with you as a patient, because if you're not going to complete this antibiotic series, you're going to not only not get better, but you're going to contribute to this growing problem of antibiotic resistance from people who don't take the right antibiotics, and the bacteria actually get stronger, right? So he would just pull it back and say, no, I'm not going to sell you this. I'm not going to work with you. So, and I know I don't want to use a medical model or analogy to illustrate a chiropractic point, but I think it makes sense when we relate those 2 items, how critical it is that the patients follow through with our recommendations, right? So let's jump back over to our screen here. And then we continue using the report of findings outline and continue with the report of findings. So that's the report of findings script. And that I wanted to emphasize that because that CAs is your ace in the hole for transitioning into delivering the report of findings, but having a patient that's fully engaged with what it is that you're trying to explain to them. Let's jump to the next one here. So this is the outline overall, and this is kind of a recap of both the script I just read you and the PowerPoint that we did before that. So incorporate the help of your team to deliver patients' report of findings and serve more patients. Your team's confidence will grow as they are cross-trained to work closely with patients, explain specific exam results, describe the doctor's recommendations, and customize financial arrangements. Now, how is it when you have an A-player team? I know, Dr. Knitsch, you're on the call today. When you have an A team, it's almost like you're unstoppable, right? It's such a great feeling to have everybody pulling in the same direction. Excuse me. So we're going to meet with the CA before the ROF to follow these steps. Explain the results of the new patient exam and answer all questions, especially those the patient will most likely ask, so that the CA can answer with confidence. Now, what does that mean right there? And I want to explain something that just happened to me this week, because we had a patient come in, and in her cervical spine, which is unusual, she has a spondylolisthesis. Now, for CAs, if you're not familiar with that, what that means is it's kind of beyond a subluxation. There's a misalignment where a bone gets shoved forward, but it's beyond subluxation. I mean, hers was a grade 2 cervical spondylolisthesis. I mean, for the doctors on the call, those you don't see those very often. However, she already knew it was there, so it wasn't like it had just happened from a traumatic spondy. It had been there for a long time. She knew it was there, and so we kind of took it from that point. But the point is that I'm reviewing the x-rays before the report of findings with my CA, so that when they walk in and they see this unusual condition, they can explain with confidence, the doctor's aware of this, they've incorporated this into the recommendations, and the type of care that they're going to be providing for you is taking that into account. So we're aware of it, we incorporated it, now let's talk about what we can do to help you. So that's important, because I want to make sure, once again, going back to the screen, that I want to make sure that the CA can answer with confidence around any particular variables that might come up. Next, we're going to review all the recommendations, including the frequency of office visits, milestones like progress exams, and care plan renewal, right? So what does that mean? We're going to review all the appointments with my CA before we even go in the room. And again, let me just say that, this is from a macro view. If you've been following DC trainings, you're probably pretty comfortable with your templates, right? You probably have 5 or 6 templates that you use for patients in terms of your recommendations, right? Maybe it's based on age, maybe it's based on the phase of subluxation, all those different factors. So I generally recommend that you have some templates created so that you can at least gravitate towards them with these different scenarios. Now, if you've already done that, then you're going to really love this, because I can, when I'm going over the results with my CA, I can just say, based on these findings, see that right there, this subluxation, you can see that right there, I want to use a template 3 for this patient. Now, what does that do? My CA can go right to template 3, which they know what that is, and they can create the care plan worksheet with that template 3, and then they're ready to go. Okay. So have those templates in place, and then it just speeds things up and it makes it really, really convenient. Okay. So going back to the screen here. So we're going to review those recommendations. We're going to discuss the financial arrangements, including insurance benefits and how they are factored into the final cost. Include options to modify the care plan in hardship cases. So what are we talking about here? What we want to go over as we're preparing for the report of findings is we want to make sure that we are reviewing what the cost is. Okay, is this an all cash plan? Is this a plan where there's an insurance that covers 20 visits a year with a $20 copay? Is this an insurance plan where there's a really high deductible and we won't ever reach that deductible with the number of visits that the insurance plan covers? So ultimately it is a cash plan. So review those details so that your CA is comfortable explaining the parameters of how the cost is going to finalize in terms of in their report of findings, right? So we want to make sure. Now, there's always the question of what about if the patient says no? Well, this could be another template in your quiver where here's what the cost is, here's what the insurance covers, here's what the out-of-pocket is for a 12-month care plan. Now, if they say no, you can modify this, but because of this subluxation phase, I wouldn't want to see them less than once a week. Okay, you could lay that out when you're going over it so that the CA knows if the patient starts to throw up some red flags, they have some parameters to work with the patient. They can modify the care plan. Maybe I wanted to see them 3 times a week, and my CA knows if they say no to that, well, then they could drop it to twice a week, see if that works. If that doesn't work, sorry, excuse me, then they could even drop to once a week. And that's okay because the doctor already approved it before going into the room. Okay. Number 4, review the overall prognosis, including areas where improvement is expected and or areas where a complete recovery is not possible, right? So that's important. You want to point that out so that your CA is equipped to focus on those areas. Let's use the example where there was bone spurs, right? If there's a bone spur on one of the bones, be sure to point that out so that your CA knows in this part here, if the patient says, well, can I get rid of that bone spur? You want to let them know, no, you can't. The best we can hope for is we contain it, that we arrest the damage, that we stop the damage. That's the best we can hope for. So if we take the x-ray in 12 months and this bone spur has not grown any larger, that's a success. We won't expect it to get smaller, right? So that's important to share that with your CA so they can explain the results with confidence. Number 5, emphasize long-term care and the importance of being flexible. And again, that kind of goes back to modifying the care plan if needed, but also what it emphasizes, and this is important, what about a patient that says, well, I'm just going to come in for what my insurance covers? Well, you have to decide, doctors, especially during the time that you're explaining this to your CA who's about to deliver the report of findings, decide if you're okay with that. Are you okay, given this patient scenario, with just accepting them with insurance only? You have to decide, right? And I can just tell you, because again, I'm in practice like you, I had a patient this week where they have pretty limited insurance and their subluxations were fairly advanced. And I let my CA know before we even went in the room. I said, if the patient isn't willing to follow these basic recommendations, I mean, I had my sort of ideal and then we pared it back a little bit. And I said, if they can't follow through with this pared back version, I'm not going to see them as a patient. And I let my CA know that right away. It turned out that that wasn't needed, but because of the damage that they had already built up to with their subluxations, I wanted to give that clear parameter so that I wouldn't be giving false hope to this patient. Okay, so let me jump back up here. There we go. So we want to emphasize the importance of long-term care, being flexible. The goal is for every patient to begin care in some capacity to improve their condition, right? That's the goal. We want to get them from the front door to the adjusting table and begin taking care of them. Now, at the bottom here, during the doctor's vacations or time away, a well-trained team ensures that the practice can continue without interrupting patient care. These steps will allow the practice to enjoy greater service capacity, higher conversion rates, more income, and ultimately better results for patients. And that's what's most important, right? We want to have the best results for our patients. We want them to enjoy the reward that comes with a nervous system that's functioning at full capacity, right? Get up in the morning, hit the ground running, have a great day, sleep great at night, enjoy quality time with those closest to you. I mean, that's where chiropractic excels like no other. So that's ultimately what we're doing here. We're empowering our CAs to go into a room on our behalf, doctors, and giving our patients that vision, that clarity around what's possible, where we want to get to with them, and how we can help them get there, and what it's going to take on their part to make that happen. It's not just your health is not a spectator sport. It's a participation sport, if I could say that. So we want to make sure that we're clear about that. Okay, so Celeste, I pointed you out earlier, so if you don't mind jumping on with me for a moment, I'd love to hear your feedback around this. And welcome to the call, Celeste.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much.
Of course, you're welcome. So, give us a little insight as far as your experience. I know you've been a CA for a long time, but when it comes to our topic today, uh, tell us about it.
Well, I very much enjoy tying in because I'm often get to be in the exam as well as bringing them back for their report of findings. So I do enjoy being able to tie in what we've learned with their primary concerns and chief complaints um, in a caring way. I feel that we kind of bond there for most patients because I tie in with the neuropath later, and I like to use that to show them, like, like for instance, if they're having severe migraines, it's really nice to have something to show them that, and let them know that, with a push off at the end when I'm finished, that I do hope that this is something that the doctor's able to help you with, and leave them with that so they know that it's not a guarantee that they're necessarily going to be a patient of ours. And I find that they're grateful for the care and excited by the end of their first visit. And I'm excited for them to watch them get better.
Absolutely. That's so great. And when you say it in that way, how do you feel that that affects the retention of that patient long term?
I think that they definitely pick up on the fact that we're not treating them like a number, a unit, um, financial, just looking at them as like dollar signs. We treat them like people with their, individual problems. I always tell them, you're unique. You're a sum of all your experiences. And, this is the different phases. I like to show them the model. I do like when you were touching on touching the model, I do like to pull the model down and show them. And I always call the first phase the supermodel spine. And then I kind of go in from there and I let them touch and look at the different bony changes and physical changes that have happened to the disc. And you can kind of see it click. You can kind of see a little light go on and they go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Um,
Absolutely.
and compare, putting that with, talking to them like a human being with compassion, they feel that you're invested, which I am, invested in them getting better. And that definitely helps, I believe, with retention because they feel that they're cared for because we do care about
Yeah, that's great. Great feedback. And so thank you. I just want to add, because I like to let the patients hold the model too, especially I actually have them hold the one that's the phase that they're in. Um, and so I find that with so many people touching that model that it kind of gets dark and there's little
them.
stuff on it. So I take them home every once in a while and I just throw them in the dishwasher with our dishes. And then they come out sparkling and clean and I bring them back to the office. So just a little tip that you can use there. But
Thank
yeah,
you for the tip.
thank you so much, and great job, Celeste. And I can tell, your passion just really comes through. You obviously love what you do. You're very good at it, and we are all in this together to help our, as you put it, real people. They are real people, and we want to help them. So good job with that, and thanks for your input.
Thank you, doctor. Appreciate that very much.
All right, so I saw a hand up, but then that was Dr. Chernout, and you jumped off, Doctor. So you'll probably come back and listen to this recording later. So sorry I missed you. I didn't get to answer your question, but I do have a question real quick as we're wrapping up that came in that was emailed in. And by the way, anyone that has questions, you're welcome to email me. It's dctrainings@gmail.com. That's dctrainings plural at gmail.com. And this question is from Dr. Michelle. Would you hire a friend of an employee? Would that be a bad internal thing to do? And I thought this was just a great question. I've hired friends many times of employees, and I actually enjoy it when we're hiring and an employee refers in a candidate to be interviewed. I love that. It's a great compliment. And many times I have hired that person um, to join our team. I'll even add one more step to that, because what might obviously come from this is, would I hire a family member of an employee to join the team? And I have done that as well. I had two sisters, Melissa and Erin. They worked with me for, gosh, Melissa was almost 10 years. Her sister, not so many. I think it was 3 years or 4 years. And then she went to college. Um, or I'm sorry, she finished college. But that being said, they were a great power team. They worked well together. Obviously when you hold your standards at a certain point in your office and your office operates with congruency and integrity around the principles that you use, then it's very easy to have somebody come in because that's a family member or a friend, because the person who's referring them to you already knows what the environment's like. That's a great compliment to you in your practice. And I'll give you a great example, and this will kind of wrap up our call today. A great example of that is when a patient comes in. I mean, I could change this question and just pose it this way. Would you accept a new patient who was referred to you by another patient? And I want to just use that example because we've all been in this situation where we have a patient refer somebody and they come in for their report of findings, and it's almost like a no-brainer. Like if you have a patient who has been a great patient for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, and they prepay every year, or they have their monthly payments set up on auto pay, and they're just a great patient, and they refer someone to you, when that person comes in as a new patient, how hard is their report of findings? How hard is it to onboard them into your practice as a practice member? It's a piece of cake. So I take this question in that context, where if a CA who works with us refers in a friend or a family person to work with us, they know what they're getting into. And they obviously talk about that before the person even comes to interview. So absolutely, I would interview somebody, and I would consider hiring somebody who is a friend of a patient or a friend of an existing CA. But then here's the bottom line, and this goes back to the patient example. If a patient refers in a friend, and that patient, then that friend comes in and starts care with you, how well you organize their care is important, and it should reflect and be similar to, not exactly the same because everybody's different, but it should be similar to what the former patient experienced with you, right? And here's the pitfall that doctors can run into. When you hire somebody who's a family member or a friend of an existing employee, your systems have to be in place to where it's not different, right? Of course, if I'm an employee of, say, Dr. Knich's office, and I want to refer in a friend, and then the friend comes in and starts working with Dr. Knich, and Dr. Knich treats this other employee completely different. And I don't mean treatment to talk about like chiropractic care wise. I'm talking about treatment as far as an employee, as a team member. If he treated this friend differently than me, the existing employee, then obviously that's not going to be right, and it's not going to be a good fit. But as long as the chemistry and I'll call it the culture of your practice is consistent for all employees, then it's a great fit. And it's a great compliment to you doctors when an existing employee refers in a friend to come and work with you. So I love it when that happens. And I just thought that this was a great question. So with that, I'm going to wrap up a little bit early. I don't see any hands up. Like I said, I saw one, but he jumped off. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, and I will look forward to continuing our thread next week. As always, email me if you have questions, dctrainings@gmail.com. Have fun. Happy spring, and I will talk to you soon.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.